These past 2 years have been difficult for us avid F1 fans as we saw two legends finally hang it up and walk away from the sport. Namely, Kimi Räikkönen in 2021 and Sebastian Vettel this past season. And if 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton does not get his way in his dealings with Mercedes, we may very well bid farewell to seeing Lewis on the grid in 2024. So how close is Lewis to finalizing a deal with the Silver Arrows? And just how much is he going to make during his stay? Well, stick around if you want to know the whopping numbers Lewis has put on the table. But before we spill the beans, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on our latest uploads. According to various news sites, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes are in talks for a new deal, with Hamilton wanting to keep racing in Formula One for at least another 3 years. And rumor has it, the extension they're discussing wouldn't even start until 2024. Toto Wolff, the boss of Mercedes, has also suggested that they might be close to signing the extension. A report from the French outlet 20 Minutes is saying that Hamilton's potential new deal with Mercedes will bring him a whopping 70 million euros per year for the next 2 seasons. That's a 55% raise from his current salary of 45 million euros. Crazy, right? It's like they're paying him as if he's going to win the F1 championship every year, even if he doesn't. And to add on to that, Hamilton is also asking for a separate contract to work as a Mercedes ambassador after he retires. According to the report, he's asking for 250 million euros over 10 years. If they agree to these numbers and he does retire after the 2025 season, he would make over $470 million in the next 13 years. The news site also mentioned that the founder of Mercedes sponsor Ineos, Jim Ratcliffe, would be financing 90% of Hamilton's new deal. That's a big jump from the 33% he financed on Hamilton's current contract. And get this, Ratcliffe is also a part owner of Mercedes F1 and a close buddy of Hamilton. Also, there's been talk about them possibly becoming future owners of Manchester United. Hamilton's even talked about it, saying, "Jim's part boss, but partner. I'd say we're more partners because we're in this together, and I hope in future to do something with Jim and build with him." He's also mentioned how he wants to get more involved in teams and support black ownership and equity in sports. A big reason why Hamilton and Mercedes want to get this extension done is that they're both invested in Hamilton's foundation, Mission 44, and their joint charitable foundation, Ignite. According to this report, a big chunk of Hamilton's salary from the new contract would go directly to Mission 44. Specifically, 15 million euros out of the 70 million salary would be used to fund the charity. And on the racing side of things, it is safe to say that Lewis is still eyeing that 8th world title to finally beat the great Michael Schumacher in the books. That, and the opportunity to prove that his teammate George Russell isn't a better driver than him. Russell arrived at Mercedes last season and was paired with Lewis Hamilton for the first time. The two Brits had different experiences in the previous season. Russell was having a tough time getting out of Q1 and scoring points, while Hamilton was dominating from pole positions to race wins and world titles. So, when they had to deal with the difficult W13, Russell was more used to that kind of challenge. But as the season progressed, Lewis was able to find his groove and was able to fight with Red Bull in Austin and Mexico before Russell won the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. The routes of Lewis through to that point and George through to that point were quite different. Mercedes trackside engineering director Chauvelin told Autosport, "Lewis, I think, had a rather sort of sudden period of adjustment from a car that he knew that he could, if he delivered what he was capable of, he'd be fighting for the win at any given weekend. George, having come from Williams, I think his experience there probably put him in good stead to deal with the car we were racing and trying to qualify at the start of the year. I think there was an element with George where he was probably hoping the experience would be a bit more different from the one he was used to, but he was very good at just getting on with the challenge that was in front of him. And I think, to be honest, in the early part of the year, it was probably easier for George to adapt than it was for Lewis. Chauvelin would add that he was amazed at how well Russell and Hamilton worked together at the start of the season, which played a vital role to help Mercedes recover. What was nice to see almost straight away was the two of them were working to put the team in a better place, he continued. The way they were working together, the way they were happy to share out the workload, the number one focus was on improving the car, not squabbling over who was going to finish fifth and who was going to finish sixth. And it's nice that you've got that maturity within the drivers and maturity within the team, because ultimately, the whole engineering group working together and the drivers working together is the way that you shortcut the time it takes to get you back to where you want to be. Chauvelin would then be asked about the brewing rivalry between George and Lewis. The British engineering director would say that Lewis does not like being beaten and that he believes that Lewis will pull out all the stops to not let George finish ahead of him in 2023. Lewis, as a driver, puts an awful lot of effort into looking for where that edge is going to come from. That constant searching for how he can emerge into a new season as an even better driver than the one that we had before is just born out of his love of winning. He doesn't want to be beaten. He's very engaged with the engineering process now. He's talking to all engineering departments on the aerodynamics side and vehicle dynamics side. But ultimately, if he finds an area that he thinks he's not good enough at, he just solves it by hard work. The amount of work a driver has to do these days out of a car, the homework, understanding what the tires are going to do, what do I need to be doing to manage them well? How am I going to get them at the right window in qualifying? That workload is much higher than it's ever been. And very often you'll see Lewis as being one of the last drivers to, if not the last driver, to leave the paddock. He's just going round and round, making sure he knows what it is he needs to do. If you can get the car where he needs it to be, we know far and well what he's capable of. On the other hand, Toto would say that he believes George will come out better than ever in 2023. Although George had a terrific first half of the season in 2022, the young Mercedes driver still feels he has a lot to improve, especially with Lewis finishing the last 4 races with P2 finishes. Toto Wolff said at the time, "George is always very self-critical, which is one of the assets that make him a future world champion. He has now been thrown into the Mercedes Works team. We keep developing the car, and if you ask me now, the final results look different. Like at the beginning of the year, you could say George was doing very well, and then in the last third of the year, it was Lewis Hamilton." Toto would add that he believes that the Silver Arrows has the best driver lineup on the grid, so it is expected for them to have those cycles, as he would call it. We have the combination of the 2 best drivers, the strongest lineup, and therefore we're always going to see those cycles, in my opinion, between the two. And there you have it, guys. So do you think Mercedes will bite on Lewis's offer? And will we see a renewed Lewis this 2023 season? Let us know in the comments section below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't.